Man, this is kind of why we watch, isn't it? I don't know about you, but I kind of got myself a little bit of a reminder today just what it means to watch regular season NHL hockey for your favorite team in a full packed house at the opposition's home court. The Vancouver Canucks played their very first NHL game of the 2021-2022 season just like 5 minutes ago, and it was a 3-2 shootout loss against the Edmonton Oilers. Okay, that's not great. Result on paper is not great, but this was a fun hockey game. My goodness, I was excited. This game got me emotionally driven. Social media was set ablaze. My household here was set ablaze with emotion because that's just kind of what good entertainment does to you, right? It gets you emotionally invested. You feel great when the good things happen, and you feel absolutely terrible when the referee misses a call or when the opposition scores a goal. It's been so long since we have felt that in this way, in front of so many fans, and I just can't take that for granted, you know. This was such a great game to watch, just from an entertainment standpoint. The star power on display in this one. Vancouver going with pretty much their regular lineup, except there was no Besser, and instead there was Chason. I guess you could say that the regular replacement for, you know, Lamico and Dowling and Chason, I guess, could have been Brock, Sutter, and maybe Mott. But this team, for the most part, was the most complete Canucks team that we have seen the entire, last few weeks. So just seeing them go out there with all the names involved, Pettersson, Hughes, Miller, Pearson, Bo, and Garland all playing together, it was a spectacle to watch. And all these guys showed off just the little tidbits of skill that made them such valuable hockey players to this team, that I could go over each of the names on this roster and name a moment where it was like, yeah, okay, they showed off at this point in the game, you know, why they're good. Bo Horvat had himself a breakaway in the first period set up by Elias Pettersson that didn't go through. Earlier on in that shift, Connor McDavid had a very good one-on-one rush where he almost had himself a goal. This game was filled with chances, and for the most part, Thatcher Demko played extraordinarily well. He kind of cheated on a few of the plays, which is kind of why he got beat, but for the most part, he was all right. You had yourselves Mike Smith, who was so good. My goodness, Mike Smith was a madman in this one, but he kind of crumbled towards the end of regulation. We'll talk about that as this video goes on, but just in general, you know, seeing the vibes, seeing this game go down, it was great. Great experience right there. And it started off with a bang as well. The Vancouver Canucks had possession at the beginning of this game. They went out there with a vengeance, trying to prove to everybody that they're a better team than what they showed last season. And my goodness, it showed. The theme that Travis Green sets for this team is that they want to be a team that is difficult to play against. And that is exactly what they looked like at the beginning stages of this game. You had some really good passing plays. Elias Pettersson was being Elias Pettersson. You saw him try to do a few nasty dangles here and there. Obviously, you saw Bo Horvat do his thing as well. For Connor Garland, finally playing on a solidified line over here, not being shuffled around up and down like he was in the preseason, I thought he had an extraordinary game. This guy went out there like a bullet shot out of a cannon. He was so feisty, so quick, so annoying for the opposition to play against, and he definitely did get under the skin of several of the Edmonton Oilers here tonight, just with his hard forecheck and his aggression in general. On defense, the entire dynamic that we had of Hughes playing with Tucker Poolman, Ekman-Larsson with Myers, and Jack Rathbone and Burrows, it was honestly a pretty good group. Jack Rathbone had a few moments where he was kind of wheeling and dealing around the offensive zone. He had some really good shifts, in particular with the Justin Dowling line. You had yourselves Quinn Hughes. Of course, he's Quinn Hughes. You're not really going to find all too many things to not say about Quinn Hughes. For Hughes' partner, though, Tucker Poolman, I honestly thought he was pretty alright. There were a few moments where it was like, okay, his stick handling in the defensive zone is kind of questionable, but for the most part, he just kind of played a style of game that we're somewhat sort of expecting out of this guy, which is boring hockey. Not too much offense from Tucker Poolman, and just some pretty solid defensive work in general, which is kind of where he excels at the most. When it comes to the Myers OEL thing, though, my goodness, we'll get to OEL in a second over here. Tyler Myers went out there with a highlight that kind of set the entire Canucks fan base ablaze with positivity. It's never really been like this before, where the entire fan base is collectively cheering for Myers, but he ends up bodying Duncan Keith to the ice, and he causes Keith to hit his head into the boards, which leaves him bloody because his head hits his helmet a little bit too hard. And it was a really big hit, really nasty hit. It was a clean one, but it was definitely not for the faint of heart. And then Tyler Myers, he answered the bell immediately after he went out there and had a fight. Took the guy down, it's no big deal, it's Tyler Myers, he's 6'7", what are you gonna do about it? But the entire fan base was just kind of collectively reminded of Daniel Sedin and what Duncan Keith did all those years ago when he elbowed the man in the head, and I guess he's finally gotten payback for it? I mean, it only took 10 years. Thank you, Tyler Myers, he did his thing. Either way, though, Tyler Myers' defensive partner, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, was pretty good as well, scoring himself a goal in the process. We'll get to that a little bit later here, but the very first Vancouver Canucks, let's just say bad spot of this game, was indeed, in my opinion, the Jesse Puljujarvi goal to kick things off 1-0. This was a play where a lot of people were kind of putting the blame on Tyler Myers because Puljujarvi, he scored his goal by having a rebound out in front and Myers was off to the side not doing anything. But this play as a whole wasn't really Tyler Myers' fault. It was kind of the fault of everybody on the ice. Quinn Hughes was chasing his man in the defensive zone, which caused a whole bunch of scrambling going on. Eventually, it's Connor McDavid who picks the puck up and he circles back to the point. You have yourselves what is Alex Chiasson not tracking his man, who happens to be Darnell Nurse on the left point. Chiasson then tries to go to McDavid. McDavid notices that Darnell Nurse is left open because Chiasson is committed to McDavid, so McDavid sends it over to Nurse. That in turn leaves the entire lane open. Nurse takes the puck and he heads straight towards the net. Elias Pettersson is the guy who is in front of Demko trying to screen, but because Darnell Nurse has a clear lane, Pettersson has to pinch towards Nurse, which leaves Puljujarvi open right there in the middle. It looks like JT Miller is going to get Puljujarvi, but then Miller drops his stick. Tyler Myers is off to the side because he's trying to guard that Leon Draisaitl one-timer on the left. He can't really leave his post because if he does, that's a wide open lane right to Draisaitl for the 1T, which is a deadly weapon in the NHL. And so it was just a number of mistakes over here. Hughes with the pinch, Chiasson with the pinch, Pettersson being forced to pinch because Chiasson pinched, Miller dropping his stick, Demko giving up the rebound, and it's kind of why Puljujarvi was there by himself, with no real guarding in front whatsoever, and he gets himself the very first Edmonton Oilers goal of the year, assisted by Connor McDavid and Darnell Nurse. You then had yourselves in the second period a goal scored by the Oilers to make things 2-2. It's Zach Hyman on the power play this time. And it's one of those plays where it's just so unfortunate to see because you could see Thatcher Demko really trying to do the right move. The pass goes to the right circle where Leon Draisaitl is there in his spot. And Thatcher Demko in particular has gotten beat by that Leon Draisaitl one-timer way too many times. Like, he is very familiar with that Draisaitl 1T on the right, especially from last year's play in the Canadian division. So, what does Demko do? He cheats. He goes towards the goalpost expecting that Draisaitl 1T. Instead, Draisaitl is like, okay, I'm not going to one-time it. I'm going to pass it to Zach Hyman, who's right there in the slot, and Hyman makes no mistake. He goes far side. It's a cross-crease goal. And it's 2-0 Edmonton, despite the fact that the Vancouver Canucks had themselves a really hot start and some really good opportunities on Mike Smith that had just been getting denied. That Mike Smith was so good for the first portion of this game that it was almost like he felt unstoppable, you know? This was one of those games where heading into like the halfway mark of the third, I was like, yeah, the Canucks are going to get shut out, aren't they? Like, it's one of those games where they play really well, they just cannot beat Smith. You had yourselves Petey doing the dekes, you had Quinn Hughes setting up plays, Pearson and Garland doing things as well, but Smith just stood up to the task. Until Oliver Ekman-Larsson comes in there. He goes over to the point, he whips one to the goal, and it's off of Nugent-Hopkins' stick, right through the screen, through Tanner Pearson's legs, and right by Mike Smith. It is 2-1 over here. Vancouver is on the board, and all of a sudden, things have gone quiet in Edmonton, because they're kind of fearing, oh no, is this the Oiler choke that we're seeing here again? Please, Mike Smith, please don't let in another one. And then all of a sudden, you have Quinn Hughes come into the zone on the left side. He's near the boards. Mike Smith is just kind of looking around, seeing where he's going. And then it's in the back of the net. Quinn Hughes, while he's at the far boards, just throws it. He's got no form, no whatever. He just sees that Smith is kind of dazed. He's just looking for the play. He's not really aware of where everything is. And Hughes just throws it right through. Smith isn't set. He looks up to the heavens right away. He knows that goal was his fault. And it's 2-2. Oh my goodness. We have Oliver Ekman-Larsson on his redemption tour. Quinn Hughes only scored like 2 goals last year. He's got 1 tonight already. And 100% of the goals that the Vancouver Canucks score in this game come off the stick of defensemen. How crazy is that? Eventually, we go to overtime. It's 3-on-3. Mike Smith makes some crazy saves off of Elias Pettersson, Tanner Pearson as well. This is what I mean, man. When Mike Smith is on, Mike Smith is on. And he was on after that Quinn Hughes goal pretty much the rest of the way through. And he stones them in overtime. He ends up stoning everybody except for Bo Horvat in the shootout. Thatcher Demko gets beat twice. Firstly by Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. Secondly by Kyle Turris. And, you know, this shootout could have gone a lot differently had Connor Garland and Tanner Pearson both just hit the net. Their shots both beat Mike Smith. They were just a little bit too high either way. And ultimately, the Oilers come away with their first win in their first game of the season. It is 3-2 over the Vancouver Canucks in a shootout. And ultimately, you know, even though you can be upset about how the Canucks played a few things in this one, this was just a fun hockey game. And I think a whole bunch of Canucks fans and Oilers fans can agree on that. The Vancouver Canucks next play on Friday, as they'll be heading over to Philadelphia, of all places. It's going to be cool to see them actually playing in an American city again. Either way, though, talk to me in the comments. What do you think about the Canucks versus the Oilers here? Game 1 of the NHL season for Vancouver. I hope you enjoyed this video. Trolls 99, and bye.